60 years might teach you what your people never learned. Consequences. The words echoed like a gunshot in the courtroom. Sharp, venomous. Final dot behind the polished mahogany bench, Judge Whitmore didn't blink. His gavel slammed down like the hammer of God. Rows of wooden pews shuddered as murmurs rippled through the packed room. The defendant didn't move. He sat in an orange jumpsuit, wrists bound in shackles, dark skin catching the white overhead. Lights. His posture was upright, proud even. Behind him, a worn-faced mother clutched a church hat against her chest, silently mouthing prayers. A little boy no older than 7 pressed his face into her side. 2 jurors wiped their eyes. A clerk looked away. The bailiff stared straight ahead. He didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He just looked forward. No twitch. No blink. No words. That stillness unnatural for a man who'd just been sentenced to spend the rest of his life in a cage made the room colder. Judge Whitmore cleared his throat. Next case. But then came the second strike, louder, nastier, meant to humiliate. "Don't worry, son," the judge called after him, voice dipped in syrupy mockery. "There's a library in prison. You might finally learn to read." Few officers chuckled under their breath. The prosecutor smirked. The room sagged with disgust. If you believe no one should be sentenced based on race or bias type, respect. In the comments, the man in chains slowly stood. One motion. Deliberate. Controlled. He turned to his mother first. "Tell Junior I'll be all right." Then, for the first time, he looked the judge dead in the eyes. "You just sentenced an FBI agent to 60 years, he said, voice low like thunder rumbling behind sealed doors. "I hope you read faster than you think I do. Because the Bureau's sending everything we've got." Silence. Real silence. The kind that eats breath and tightens throats. A reporter in the gallery dropped her pen. The court artist stopped mid-stroke. The smirk slid off the prosecutor's face like paint in the rain. Judge Whitmore blinked. His mouth opened then shut. He looked toward the bailiff. Is this some kind of... The defendant didn't wait. He reached into the pocket of a folder labeled evidence, the very folder the court had refused to examine, and pulled out a black wallet with a gold badge. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Clear. Embossed. Real. Agent Langston. "Dale," he said quietly, turning the badge toward the courtroom. Then he smiled. "For the first time, and I hope you remember this moment, Your Honor, because the world is about to..." The name Langston Dale didn't come up in regular searches, because he'd learned long ago when you look like him, you don't survive systems like this by being easy to find. Before the badge. Before the courtroom, before the chains. There was a boy, a chessboard, and a father who never came home. He'd grown up 2 blocks from the courthouse that tried to bury him, raised by a mother who taught him how to carry both books and burdens. She cleaned hotel lobbies by night and read him legal briefs by day. She'd once dreamed of law school. That dream was stolen the moment her baby brother was arrested for a crime someone else confessed to too late. Langston remembered watching that courtroom as a boy, seeing how no one looked like his uncle, how the judge barely looked up from his coffee, how the prosecutor never once said his name right. He remembered thinking, they don't see us. So he decided to make sure one day they would. He didn't shout. He studied hard, graduated valedictorian, turned down 3 scholarships to attend a small, overlooked law college because he wanted to learn how the system worked, not just how to play by its rules. By 24, he was already in the Bureau. By 26, he was undercover. By 28, he was building one of the most important covert investigations into judicial misconduct the state had ever seen. The assignment? Expose corruption in the court of Judge Martin Whitmore. The same judge who just sentenced him on falsified charges. Langston knew the risks. Undercover agents typically infiltrated gangs or cartels. But here, he was infiltrating something. Older, quieter, deadlier. Institutional racism disguised in robes and Latin phrases. They wanted evidence, paper trails, secret recordings, patterns. They needed someone who could not only survive the machine but make it talk. Langston volunteered. And for 3 years, he played his part. He let traffic stops turn into lectures. Let slurs pass unchallenged in chambers. Sat through court lunches where men in suits mocked black defendants with cartoon voices and smug jokes. Took notes, watched, waited until the day came when Judge Whitmore's team planted fake evidence in a case they thought would never see. Daylight. Langston made sure it would, but in the final stage, something went wrong. One of the judge's allies caught wind of inconsistencies in his background file. They moved fast. Set up a case false ID, planted fingerprints, forged witness. Slammed him with charges and rushed the trial through in under 3 weeks. He wasn't just being railroaded. He was being made an example. The plan had been to end the op quietly with a sealed indictment. But Langston refused to break cover. He wanted it public, visible. Felt so when the moment came, he let them shackle him. Let them call him illiterate. Let them laugh. Let them record it, because he knew the reveal would echo louder than the insult ever could. Meanwhile, in chambers, Judge Whitmore paced. His hands shook barely. But enough. He slammed a drawer shut. Papers fluttered off his desk. A dozen calls. Blinked on his office phone. Reporters, lawyers. 2 from the governor's office. He hadn't expected that. A defendant? An agent? His eyes darted to the bookshelf. To the awards, the plaques. The framed photograph of him shaking hands with senators. His reputation. His entire career now rested on how quickly he could spin this. He didn't know the worst part yet. Langston wasn't working alone. Back in a modest apartment not far from the courthouse, a team of analysts and civil rights attorneys watched as live footage from courtroom 3B exploded across social media. #justice for Langston. #judge exposed. #FBI undercover. It was trending within 12 minutes. Langston's lead handler, special agent. Rivera exhaled and hit send on a sealed digital file. The file contained transcripts, photos, testimony, all gathered under the Cody name Operation Black Robe, and in the center of it all, a quiet, brilliant black man who let the system try to destroy him. So he could show the world how it really worked. Is this the guy from the trial? The coffee shop screen showed the freeze frame. Langston Dale standing, badge raised. Judge Whitmore mid-blink. A room. Frozen in time. The video had been clipped, captioned, and reposted millions of times in under a day. In schools, barbershops, break rooms, and subway stations, it played on loop. No hashtags. No angry monologue. Just one silent, devastating image. A black man in cuffs, revealing a badge that cracked the courtroom in half. Inside the FBI's downtown satellite office, Rivera's phone didn't stop buzzing. She leaned back, staring at a glass board covered in red thread connections. Articles, names, dockets. Whitmore was just one of many. Langston's reveal hadn't just exposed one corrupt judge. It lit the fuse on something deeper. A secretary stepped in, whispering, "He's here." Rivera looked up. A thin man in a gray vest walked in. The director's eyes were narrowed, his jaw tight. "We're either heroes," he said without smiling, "or the most hated office in the bureau by sundown." Rivera didn't blink. "Both." Across town at Belridge Law School, Professor. Annika Wells stood in front of a silent classroom. She had paused the video mid-frame. Her students, diverse, brilliant, exhausted, stared at the image. That man," she said softly, tapping the screen, "just did more for criminal justice reform in 6 seconds than most of us will do in 6 years." In the back row, a white student shifted awkwardly. "But is he allowed to do that? I mean, wasn't that risky? Reckless?" A black student up front didn't turn around. She just whispered, "Existing while black is already a risk. Might as well make it count." No one argued. Meanwhile, the courthouse hallways buzzed like a kicked anthill. Clerks whispered in corners. Attorneys hovered by vending machines, avoiding eye contact. Even janitors were trading stories now. "I always knew Whitmore was shady, but this is next level." One by one, files started disappearing from certain offices. And one by one, quiet emails went out from assistants to defense teams. "You might want to appeal that 2019 case." Inside the judge's private lounge, Whitmore stared at the muted television. Commentators, activists, analysts all talking about him all calling for review, investigation. Disbarment his lawyer paced nearby, tossing words like damage control, deniability, and rogue agent. But Whitmore wasn't listening anymore. He saw his reflection on the TV screen. For the first time in years, he didn't like what he saw in Langston's old neighborhood. The liquor store owner wiped his counter and nodded toward a customer watching the clip on her phone. "That kid's mama used to bring him in here with chess books," he muttered, voice caught between pride and disbelief. "Always said he was going to change something." A little girl with braids stared at the video. "Is he a superhero?" she asked. The shopkeeper smiled sadly. "Better. He's real." That afternoon, a reporter stood outside the courthouse, broadcasting live. Wind tugged at her mic as she looked into the lens. Reverberations are already being felt nationwide, as what many are calling the Langston reveal continues to dominate the news cycle. Supporters rally around the message of quiet rebellion and institutional courage, while critics, a car honked. Behind her, a crowd began to chant, "Who's the judge now? Who's the judge now?" The woman adjusted her earpiece, clearly rattled. As you can hear, emotions are running high." Back inside a quiet apartment, Langston sat on the floor, out of the spotlight. No lights. No microphones. Just a chessboard in front of him. He moved a piece. His mother poured tea without a word. The little boy curled up beside him, chin on his arm. "Are you going to be famous now?" the boy asked. Langston smiled. "No, son. I'm going to be watched." Then he looked up at his mother. "You okay, Mama?" She nodded once, wiping her eyes. Your silence spoke loud enough. Symbolic moment. Later that evening, a courthouse janitor noticed something scratched into the wood of one of the benches where Langston had sat. Just one word. Seen. No one claimed it, but it stayed. First blow came wrapped in politeness. A crisp envelope. No return address. Delivered by hand. Langston opened it on his mother's kitchen counter, flanked by worn teacups and a sleeping boy who'd finally stopped asking why jail happens to good men. Inside the envelope, a letter, typed neatly. "This is to inform you that your recent conduct may constitute a breach of federal protocol under Sections 5.7 and 9.2 of the Confidential Conduct Agreement. You are advised to refrain from public comment while an internal review is conducted." Number. Signature. No badge number. Just that word. Advised. The language of power without fingerprints. Langston folded it once and set it aside. "I told you." His mother whispered, "They don't like it when you speak without their permission." At the FBI field office, Rivera was already dealing with fallout. "Do you understand what you've done?" The deputy director barked over the phone. Rivera stared at the call timer and didn't answer. "Have senators asking if our agency orchestrated a public ambush of The judiciary. She finally replied, "No, sir. The judiciary ambushed itself. We just brought a camera." Click. Meanwhile, the courthouse PR machine creaked into motion. They rolled out headlines. Judge Whitmore has a long history of judicial excellence. FBI agent may have violated protocol, sources say. Trial tactics in question, but was it entrapment? On cable news, talking heads lean forward with concerned brows. "We're not saying the judge is innocent," one host explained. "But don't we need to talk about the optics of a federal agent posing as a criminal? Isn't that dangerous?" Langston watched it all from the corner of a small living room. He didn't shout, didn't rant. Instead, he opened his laptop, pulled up a file titled "Clean Cases Tainted by Whitmore," and kept adding names. Real counterattack came next. Not through the press, not through legal warnings, but through fear. That night, a car circled his mother's street 3 times. At 2:14 a.m., someone threw a rock at their window. No one was hurt. The police took the report. Briefly. Then said, "Could have been kids." No investigation followed. At 8 a.m., Langston was already in a suit and tie. Not in court. At a press conference. He stood before microphones with no emotion, flanked by civil rights attorneys and victims of wrongful convictions, people quietly watching the man who'd once pretended to be just like them. He opened a folder. Hold it high. This contains names, case files, evidence, years of corruption tied directly to Judge Martin Whitmore. If the Department of Justice won't act, the people will. Gasps. The next question came sharp. Are you prepared for the consequences of breaking protocol? Langston didn't blink. I didn't break protocol. I broke the silence. Within hours, backlash came fast. Whitmore's lawyers filed for a gag order. Formal ethics inquiry was opened against Langston. The governor's office released a statement of concern. And a special news report aired on Channel 8 calling Langston a renegade operative with a personal vendetta. Still, he didn't flinch. Inside the courthouse, Whitmore watched every minute. His hand shook now when he held coffee. Laughter was gone. So was the swagger, but not the power. He still wore the robe, still controlled the docket. And on that day, he made a call from chambers. "Find me something," he told a clerk. Anything. His background, his file. That badge he flashed. Let's make sure it was real. The clerk hesitated. "Sir, we might want to." Whitmore's voice cut sharp. "Do it." At sunset, Rivera joined Langston in a quiet parking garage downtown. She didn't speak at first, just handed him a flash drive. "Here," she said softly. Everything they tried to erase, transcripts, audio, chamber tapes. It's all time-stamped and signed. Langston nodded. "You sure?" "No," she said, "but you're not alone anymore." That night, graffiti appeared on the courthouse. Steps. Not protest. Just a quote, stenciled in quiet silver paint. Truth sounds like a threat when lies run the system. No camera caught who did it, but the judge had to walk over it the next morning. Twice. The courtroom didn't look any different that morning. Same wooden pews, same seal above the judge's bench, same chill in the air that always felt colder for some than others. But today, the air shifted. Because Langston Dale walked in not in cuffs, not in orange, but in a charcoal gray suit and polished shoes. Quiet, controlled, deadly with the truth. Across from him sat a man wrongfully convicted of car theft 5 years ago under Whitmore's docket. Public defender asleep through half the trial. Evidence misfiled. Appeal denied. Today was the hearing. Langston didn't argue with passion. He didn't raise his voice. He let the facts speak. "Your Honor," he said steadily, presenting 3 signed affidavits. This video surveillance footage was excluded in the original trial under the justification of relevance. Yet here it is clearly showing the defendant at work during the alleged time of the theft. He tapped the screen. The room went still. Even the opposing counsel looked rattled. Word spread fast. A week passed. Then another. Langston wasn't chasing headlines, but they followed him anyway. A TikTok clip of him laying out a courtroom timeline went viral. A Washington Post op-ed called him the man rewriting justice one file at a time. A quiet moment where he handed a tissue to a mother whose son was freed. It aired on evening news with the caption, "Compassion wears a badge." Meanwhile, Judge Whitmore issued a public statement. Short, controlled, plastic. I welcome all review processes and am confident they will confirm my integrity. But those closest to him knew the walls were closing in. At a law school auditorium in Chicago, Langston gave a guest lecture. No notes. Just a simple sentence on the projector. Silence isn't always passive. Sometimes it's preparation. He didn't talk about himself. He talked about systems, about precedent, about how a courtroom is a stage and justice depends on who holds the script. Student raised her hand. Do you want to be a judge someday? Langston smiled, slow. No, I want to make sure judges answer to something higher than robes. At home, his mother watched every broadcast with her hands folded. She didn't say much, but every time she looked at the chessboard by the window, she smiled, because her boy hadn't just come home. He'd returned with a checkmate in his pocket. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice announced something no one expected. A full review panel has been assembled to assess past convictions under Judge Martin Whitmore's jurisdiction. With preliminary cooperation from the FBI and external oversight. Counsel. The room where they announced it? Named Langston Dale Hall. He didn't ask for it. Didn't attend. He was in a community center that day clearing the record of a teenage boy arrested for resisting arrest. While walking home that evening, Rivera joined him for coffee. You know, she said, you're being talked about in rooms you'll never enter. Langston sipped quietly. I'm not here to enter rooms, he said. I'm here to unlock them for others. One of the newly exonerated men Langston helped sat quietly at the back of the courtroom days later, holding a cardboard sign that it didn't say thank you, didn't say justice. Just he listened. The hearing chamber smelled like varnish and fear. 3 high-backed chairs sat beneath the state seal. Cameras lined the far wall. Lights blazed from above, hot and unflinching. The room was packed reporters, lawyers, professors, even former jurors. Some came for justice, others for blood, but only one seat mattered today. Langston Dale took it with quiet poise, wearing the same gray suit, his tie straight, no notes in his hands. His eyes scanned the panel once, then rested on the man across the room. Judge Martin Whitmore, still robbed, still smirking. But the bags under his eyes told a different story. The lead ethics investigator cleared her throat. Mr. Dale, thank you for appearing. Please state your involvement in Operation Black Robe. Langston didn't flinch. I was the lead agent, he said. I embedded myself under judicial jurisdiction to gather first-hand evidence of unethical conduct, including racially motivated sentencing, tampering, and institutional gaslighting. Gasps from the crowd, from the staff, even from a junior panel member who looked up stunned. Whitmore leaned into his mic. Objection. This isn't a court trial. This is character assassination. Langston didn't even turn. Character is what you show when you think no one's watching, he said flatly. You've been showing yours for 20 years. Outside, the hearing was being broadcast live. Every courtroom in the state had. The feed. In barbershops, kids watched on phones. In classrooms, Teachers paused lessons. In prisons, inmates crowded around TVs, holding their breath. 1,000 men who'd been called liars finally felt heard. Back inside, the panel chair narrowed. Her eyes. Agent Dale, can you speak to a specific incident? Langston reached into his folder and calmly slid out a page. Case 409B, 19-year-old black male sentenced to 12 years for attempted burglary. Judge Whitmore referenced fatherlessness in sentencing, what the court never admitted. The boy was carrying groceries into his aunt's home and used a spare key. The crowd murmured. Langston continued. Security footage proved it. The prosecutor withheld it. Judge Whitmore dismissed the appeal with one sentence: a thug is a thug. The room fell silent. Whitmore's jaw clenched. He stood. May I respond? The chair nodded. He approached the podium with all the pomp of a man used to being untouchable. I have served this court with integrity. I have sentenced thousands according to law. If this bureau agent disagrees with my rulings, he should do so within proper channels, not with theatrics and press tours. Langston didn't rise. He didn't interrupt. He just let silence settle, then calmly said, You didn't fear exposure. You feared equality. The panel leaned forward. One member asked, Mr. Dale, do you believe Judge Whitmore's bias is systemic or personal? Langston inhaled once. Then gave the line that would trend within hours. Systemic racism has many voices, but it needs people like Whitmore to stay polite enough to survive the paperwork. The hearing went on for hours. Langston presented charts, names, quotes, timelines. No anger, no shouting. Just the crushing weight of truth, delivered in calm, surgical precision. By the end, even Whitmore's legal counsel looked shaken. Outside, chants had begun. Not rage. Just rhythm. Facts don't lie. Judges do. We see you now. Langston, Langston, Langston. After the hearing, Langston exited through the side. Reporters surged toward him, but he held up a hand. No statement today. He looked tired, but grounded. Rivera met him by the car. You broke something in there, she said softly. Langston shook his head. No, I unmasked something that was already broken. The alert came through at 7:42 m. Langston was sitting at the kitchen table, slicing apples for his nephew's lunchbox. The boy had fallen back asleep on the couch, cartoons still flickering across the screen. Rivera's voice crackled through the phone. They're doing it. Langston didn't ask what. He didn't need to. At 9 a.m. Eastern, the U.S. Attorney General stepped to a podium in Washington. Flags behind her. Flashbulbs firing. Eyes from every coast watching. Effective immediately, Judge Martin Whitmore is suspended from the bench pending full investigation and formal charges. Furthermore, a federal audit of racial sentencing disparities is now underway across all states where similar patterns have emerged. The crowd erupted. Not in anger. In relief. By noon, hashtags flooded every feed. Hashtag Langstondale, hashtag Black Robe Broken, hashtag Justice is louder. Petitions hit 5 million signatures. Students marched outside courthouses. One girl in Baltimore held up a sign that simply read, I want to be him. Back in Langston's neighborhood, the corner store owner turned up the volume and laughed. Man didn't raise his voice once, he said, and they heard him all the way to Capitol Hill. The kid beside him sipped a juice box and whispered, he talks like he's already seen the ending. But Langston wasn't celebrating. He was in a classroom that day guest speaking at. A local high school. No cameras. No suits. Just him and 20 teenagers. He didn't talk about corruption. He talked about dignity. How do you beat a system that pretends it's not broken? One student asked. Langston took a breath. You? Show it a mirror so clearly, it runs out of excuses. They were silent for a moment. Then one clapped. Then another dot until the whole room stood not for applause, out of respect. That night, the phone rang again, this time from the governor's office. "Mr. Dale," said the voice, measured and soft, "we'd like to offer you a state honor, Medal of Civil Courage. Possibly even a future advisory seat on the Justice Reform Board." Langston didn't say yes, didn't say no. He just asked, "How many names on my list have been reviewed?" There was a pause. 57 so far. Call me when it's 500. Click. The headlines didn't stop. 60 minutes. Requested an interview. Time magazine named him Person of the Year. Late-night hosts praised him, some nervously joking, others sincerely stunned. But Langston stayed off camera. He visited prisons, attended expungement hearings, sent care packages to mothers, still fighting for their sons, because his name wasn't the mission. Their freedom was. Rivera met him at the courthouse steps. One evening. "I've never seen anything like this," she admitted. "You shook the ceiling." Langston looked toward the building, its stone pillars now shadowed in early dusk. "I didn't shake the ceiling," he said. "I just reminded everyone what was underneath it." The first change was small. A single sign replaced. On the front of a courthouse, Judge Martin Whitmore Hall, changed to "The Justice Bench in honor of the wrongfully sentenced." No announcement. No ribbon cutting. Just changed. People noticed, and it didn't stop there. Across the state, courtroom administrators began reopening case files. Defense attorneys got midnight calls. "You might want to check your client's 2016 trial." Law professors restructured their syllabi. New textbooks included Operation Black Robe as a case study under systemic bias. One national publisher added a chapter, Langston Dale and the Power of Professional Rebellion. A Supreme Court clerk leaked that 3 justices had called for internal reviews of sentencing disparities in lower courts. One retired judge wrote a scathing op-ed. "He didn't just expose a man. He exposed the culture we protected." In a small county in Georgia, a black girl named Tasha stood up during civics class. "I don't want to be famous," she said. "I want to be prepared, like Mr. Dale." Her teacher wiped her eyes and nodded. "Then let's start today." Meanwhile, city councils began proposing bills, mandatory implicit bias training for all judges, open access court transcripts. For all felony trials, civilian review boards for sentencing audits. Langston didn't draft these bills. He didn't testify in Congress. He sent research packets, quietly, efficiently. His name is often left off the credits. In prisons, men wrote letters to each other to Langston. Most said the same thing. "We didn't think anyone was watching." One man drew a chessboard at the top of his letter with the words, "Still fighting. Still thinking 3 moves ahead. Thank you for showing us the game." At a legal conference in Chicago, a white judge paused mid-speech. "This year I had to ask myself something no robe ever forced me to ask before. Who do my patterns protect? And who do they punish?" He looked out over the crowd. "And I have Langston Dale to thank for that question." Langston never responded to the fame. He was in Mississippi helping reopen a case where a black man had been jailed for using a check that bounced by $5. 10 years served. No cameras. Just the law and the truth. Rivera joined him in a dusty courthouse parking lot, holding 2 bottles of water. "You've changed the country," she said. Langston took one and shook his head. "I didn't change it," he replied. "I just remembered it was watching itself." That night, in a church basement, Langston spoke to a group of young black law interns. He didn't quote laws. He didn't name-drop agencies. He told a story about a boy who saw a courtroom that never saw him back and who learned to sit so still. The whole system stopped to notice. Symbolic moment. The boy Langston once protected his nephew, was asked to write a speech for school. He stood at a podium with big eyes and nervous hands, reading slowly. My uncle wore handcuffs in front of a judge. Then he wore a badge. Then he wore a suit, but he never wore hate. He told me to be quiet only if I'm listening, not if I'm hurting. The room gave him a standing ovation. Langston sat in the back, tears in his eyes. It started with a headline. Langston Dale fabricated credentials? No byline. No clear source. Just a smear. Designed to spread, not to stand. By noon, 5 more followed. Did he misuse FBI resources? Unsealed file suggests agent lied under oath. Hero or hoax? Cable news panels went into frenzy mode. 2 former judges implied his entire investigation was tainted by personal vendetta. One anchor called him a dangerous example of reverse discrimination. And the internet? It did what the internet always does. Twisted facts, cut clips, mocked his voice, memes, trolls, death threats. Langston didn't flinch, but he did turn off his phone. For the first time in months, he unplugged. Behind the scenes, Rivera worked overtime. The DOJ launched a quiet inquiry to confirm Dale's undercover authority, something that had never been questioned until now. We know it's retaliation, she told him, but they want a shadow of doubt to hang over every courtroom you've touched. Langston sat in her office, staring at the wall. It won't stick, she added. Langston's voice was quieter than usual. Even shadows can slow the light. That night, his mother sat beside him in the living room, folding laundry. I see that look in your eyes, she whispered. It's the one your uncle wore when they made him feel like nothing he did mattered. Langston looked at the floor. They'll never let the truth stand. She folded a shirt. Set it down gently. They're not supposed to. You stand anyway. But the weight grew. A law review journal retracted their article praising his work. A nonprofit canceled a planned award, citing ongoing review. Even some activists quietly distanced themselves. Langston started walking more, alone, through neighborhoods, past the courthouse, past murals of himself he never asked for. Everywhere he went, eyes followed. Some kind, some are afraid, some accuse. Until one afternoon, he entered a community center for a quiet panel. The event had been nearly canceled. Attendance was light, and yet, a boy in the front row raised his hand. Sir, what do you do when you know the truth, but no one believes? You? Langston looked at him. Saw himself at 10. And for the first time in weeks, he smiled. He stepped forward. No mic, no notes, spoke from a place deeper than pain. The truth doesn't always win the first round, he said. It gets buried, mocked, delayed. But if you carry it long enough, it outlasts the lie. The boy nodded slowly, wrote it down. Later. That night, a surprise came. The Attorney General called a late press conference. We have completed our internal review of Agent Dale's record, assignment logs, and authorization forms. We confirm that he acted within the full legal scope of his duties. The recent claims are unfounded, politically motivated, and part of a coordinated smear effort. The reporters gasped, but Langston was already back at his desk sorting case files. When Rivera texted him the clip, he didn't even glance up. Let them talk, he said. The work doesn't pause. A letter arrived at Langston's door the next morning. No return address. Inside, a photo of a young man walking out of prison, arms open, his mother crying into his chest. One sentence on the back. You didn't know my name, but you freed me anyway. Langston placed it on the fridge, next to his nephew's drawing. Courtroom was brighter now. Literally. They'd replaced the old yellow fluorescents with natural daylight panels. The jury box was widened. Accessibility improved. Even the bench had been lowered slightly to remove the sense of throne-like distance. But the most noticeable change? A small plaque on the wall, Langstondale Justice Wing, dedicated to those who never stopped standing even when silenced. He hadn't asked for it. He hadn't even shown up to the unveiling, but it was there. Permanent, and every law student who entered saw it, before they saw anything else. Langston lived quieter now. Same apartment, same neighborhood. Still walked the block in the mornings. Still said hello to the corner store owner who now stocked law textbooks in the back just in case. He taught part-time at a local college. Intro to Legal Systems. Room 104. Small class. Big presence. He never used slides. He just told stories. His nephew, older now, came home from school one day holding a flyer. "Uncle Lang," he said, eyes bright, "they want you to run for mayor." Langston laughed gently. "Why?" "Because everyone listens when you talk." Langston looked down, thoughtful. "I don't want to be a voice people follow," he said quietly. "I want to be the reason they find their own." Elsewhere, ripple effects continued. Dozens of wrongfully imprisoned men were released. 2 new federal bills were passed under the name Dale Protocols, ensuring greater oversight of courtroom evidence handling. And the FBI quietly changed a section in their Academy Manual on ethics and undercover integrity. Langston's case was now required reading, not as a cautionary tale, as a turning point. One day, years later, he received an invitation. "Please join us for the ceremonial retirement of Judge Martin Whitmore's robe. It will be placed in the National Museum of Justice under the exhibit Unmasked, when power was questioned." Langston declined. He had another engagement that day. At a local middle school. Career day. He showed up in a plain gray blazer. No badge, no titles. Just a folder of photos and one chessboard. The teacher whispered, "You sure you want to talk to 7th graders instead of the museum crowd?" Langston smiled. "They're the ones building the next museum." In the back of that classroom, a girl raised her hand after his talk. "Didn't it hurt when they lied about you?" Langston paused. His hands folded. "Yes," he said. "It hurt. But the lies only worked because too many people stayed quiet. That's why I keep going." So the next time someone's truth is too quiet to hear, someone's listening. That evening, he walked home under a golden sky. Same steps, same shoes, but nothing was the same.